This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call the Intergovernmental Committee meeting to order at 7:11 p.m. Present are, I will ask Mr. Massarola to call the roll, please, so that I'm not missing somebody whose picture I don't see.
Council President Jones?
That's right. I'll just write, Chuck. You go ahead and tell me who's.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Council President Jones is here. Councilman Kelly is here. Councilman Glassburn is here. Councilman Schuman is here. Councilman Limpert is here. Councilman Broussard is here. Mayor Kennedy is here. Director of Law Garreau is here. Director of Safety Service Glonner is here. Director of Community and Planning and Community Development at Lieber is here. Director of Finance Carrie Kupfer is here, and Recreation Commissioner Betsy Drinsky is here.
And Mr. DeFranco.
And I'm sorry, yes. And
that's okay. All right. Okay, good. Tonight we are here to discuss ordinance number 2020-55, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an amendment of the sewer service area defined by Exhibit B of the sewer service agreement with the County of Cuyahoga as amended and restated in 2013. Before we begin, I'd like to first call on Law Director Garreau. Mr. Garreau, would you please explain the relationship, please, between the developer of this property, Mr. Valori, and our assistant law director, please? Not that there is a conflict. I do not believe that there is. I am just stating it for the record and for clarification to the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we did have an opportunity, the gentleman and I had an opportunity this afternoon to discuss this. I wanted to make it clear, Mr. O'Malley in my office works as an associate with Valori and Gordillo. Mr. Valori is related to his immediate boss. He does not work for Mr. Valori. He knows Mr. Valori. Mr. Valori has had some communication with the city and Brian, and Pete, but in a capacity as an interested party, not as a client or not as anybody who is engaged in any type of a relationship with Mr. O'Malley or my office. So that's the long answer. The short answer is there is no professional relationship between the two with respect to this project.
Thank you for clarifying that. You know, there are a few Valoris, and I wanted to make sure everybody knew how it worked. So with that, I would like to begin by saying that I did have a conversation with our engineer, Mr. DeFranco. I did set out several questions directly to Mr. DeFranco in order to speed our committee meeting along. He responded to our committee and copied all of council, and so you could see for yourselves the types of questions I asked, and if you had read through them, that might sort of cut short some of the discussion that we might be having tonight. With that, I will let Mr. DeFranco please just go through your information that you provided based on the questions that I asked, unless you'd prefer I ask you the questions.
No, thank you. I can give a brief summary.
Perfect, thank you.
So this legislation is a proposed amendment to modify the geographical boundary to include a proposed development in Olmsted Township, the preserves and the sanctuary of Olmsted. So currently there are 8 points of entry where sanitary sewer from Olmsted Township enter North Olmsted. They are at Barton Road, Vita Lane, Stearns Road, Mackenzie Road, Crestwood Lane, Fitch Road, Pebblebrook, and Lilac Court. The proposed preserve and sanctuary development consists of approximately 136 single-family homes. So, as I mentioned, this would change the geographic boundary. However, it doesn't change the sanitary sewer inflow limits from Olmsted Township. All of the limits are at or below the allowable quantities in the agreement between the city and the county, which was adopted in Council Ordinance 2013-88. So flow from this development will connect to the Pebblebrook point of entry. There's an existing 10-inch sanitary sewer which runs in Pebblebrook and then connects to a 12-inch sanitary sewer in Canterbury Road, which then discharges into the 36-inch South Interceptor sewer, which flows through the golf course and onto the wastewater treatment plant. This amendment is only related to sanitary sewer. It does not include stormwater. Stormwater is maintained by the county and Olmsted Township and doesn't enter North Olmsted. I also provided a map showing that this development is not located within a floodplain. This modification is required by EPA. Currently, there's 22 acres of the development, which is not accounted for in any facility planning area. And before the EPA will issue a permit for sanitary sewers, it has to be accounted for in a facility planning area. So this will put it into the North Olmsted wastewater treatment plant sewer area. And in conclusion, the proposed sanitary flows conform to the current sewer service agreement adopted in Ordinance 2013-88. Therefore, I would recommend approval. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. I have just a few for clarification. So the things that we went over, I went over with Mr. DeFranco, were with regard to some of the criteria that may cause a problem. Let the record reflect that Mr. Glassburn has joined our meeting. I would like to talk about briefly the fact that the North Olmsted residents that might be affected by this project would be Pebblebrook Sandpiper and then the Viewpoint development, because of course that water comes, toward those two developments. In talking about this with Mr. DeFranco, the floodplain was a concern. The North Olmsted Golf Club sits entirely in a floodplain. However, none of the homes in either development are in a floodplain, but I wasn't sure that this would increase or decrease any likelihood of potentially more water. The first hole at Springvale in part, and did we discuss, Mr. DeFranco, then that creek that runs through near the first hole is in the floodplain. So to be clear of where that geography is. Since the grading is not going to change and it's not in our city, none of that wholly matters, but I think that for resident comfort, it's important to know those facts. The other thing that Mr. DeFranco, if you could clarify, is approximately how much below capacity is our system right now with what the thresholds are, specifically really just that one connection through Springvale from Renaissance to Springvale.
So the Pebblebrook connection, the allowable flow is 0.64 million gallons per day. And with this development, it will be at 0.54 million gallons per day. And overall, from Olmsted Township, the agreement allows 4.86 million gallons per day. And including this development, the flow from Olmsted Township will be at 4.172 million gallons per day. So both are below the limits.
For this project, if anything wanted to be done on the other side near Renaissance, then we could be meeting capacity, or we'd have to be concerned about what that project would entail. Would that be correct?
They would need our approval before they can proceed.
Okay. And then the other question that I wanted clarification is with regard to the size of the piping. The reason I'm asking this question is because obviously if you're going from a larger diameter to a smaller diameter, you've got a problem. So while our connections can handle it, what is the new development? What will their connection be to ours? What size piping?
It hasn't been designed yet. But the minimum size for public sanitary sewers is 8-inch.
Okay, so what's the maximum size?
There is no maximum.
So what is standard then, I guess, because this is not going to come through our planning, right? It's going to go to Olmsted's planning. So how would we cover that if they had a larger diameter coming into our smaller, to a smaller that we might have, even though ours are not small?
Yeah.
We've got some capacity, folks.
If it doesn't matter what size they connect. It would be restricted by our pipe, which is a 10-inch.
Okay.
So there's only so much you can fit through that 10-inch.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. And Mr. Glonner, did you have anything to add to that, please?
Not really, Madam Chair, other than if they were going to make a connection, this is probably the best connection because it's the newest pipe and there is very little, if any at all, I&I, so it won't really affect our system or cause any problems at the plant.
Okay. Are there any questions from committee? Mr. Glassman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I saw in the media coverage of this that this is going to generate a $250,000 in tap-in fees if I'm correlating the correct project to this. What is the fate of those fees? What do those go to? Thank you.
Director Copper?
Tap-in fees go into the sewer revenue fund and they're to be used for future capital improvements. So they don't go for operations.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee? Council? Okay. With that, I would like to make a motion to approve 2020-55 to all of council and ask for a second.
Madam Chair, the mayor appears to want to speak.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was looking down. My apologies, Mayor. Oh, and you're within
I apologize. I think I chimed in late. So a couple quick questions. I haven't had a chance to talk to Pete on this one, but do we have any ability to inspect these houses as they go up? Just because we don't want any cross connections. Do we have that ability? That's my first question. Do they have, if we put this this project in North Olmsted, we would without question have stormwater retention requirements. Do they have the same stormwater retention requirements? And my final question is for Carrie, and that is, you said it goes, the fund goes into the sewer revenue fund. Can that pay debt service or just future projects? And I'll let you guys speak.
I'll start.
Yeah.
So the county does the inspections, but we, as part of our approval, we establish the limits for how the connections are made and how much infiltration we allow. So if down the road, if there's an issue, we can address it at that point. And there are stormwater management requirements. They're probably similar to ours. All the requirements throughout Cuyahoga County are pretty similar.
Ms. Copper?
It goes into the sewer revenue fund and it's intended for future capital improvements.
Only.
I haven't looked at it in a while, but I'm pretty sure that it's for future capital improvements only.
Will you verify that tomorrow, please, or when we jump online?
I will, absolutely. And just to let you know, like tap-in fees are not calculated in our revenue study when we set the rate. So so these are monies over and above what we anticipate through user fees.
Okay, but I would like that answer, please, so quickly, just so that we all are clear on how the money can or cannot be spent, so it doesn't come up in, some future discussion about, well, this money from here to there. I'd like clarification. Thanks.
It won't be a problem. I'll look at the county agreement tomorrow.
Morning. Thanks. I would like to then, are you seeing anybody else questions? Comments? Mary, did you get all of your information settled? Okay, I'd like at this time to make a motion to approve 2020-55 to all of council and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'd like to then conclude my meeting at 7:26 PM. Thank you.